You may ask yourself why. Why is it important to discover technology when it is clearly in front of us? Simply put, it is changing our lives. The idea we need to understand is this: what is it doing to us? This series will explore the advancements in technology and try to discover the ways technology has changed the way we live. From the cell phone, tablet, or computer you may be watching this on, to that self-checkout line you may have used the other day in order to avoid waiting in line for a cashier to help you. Technology is changing. It is important to understand this and realize the changes that are occurring in our lives. We need to take a step back and understand the value of technology, but also become informed of what it is doing to us on the grand scheme of things. This is technology. Music can mean many things to people. It could be means to escape, an artistic expression, or just something to pleasure over. We use many forms of technology to play, create, and listen to music. What is interesting is the music you've been listening to is actually a remix of already existing music. Music that, by law, has been copywritten by the music industry. I bring this up for a simple reason. Isn't all music a remix of something that already exists? To understand this, we need to take a look back in history and discover the creation of music. While I can speculate the way in which music is produced since the beginning of time in human existence, the earliest record of musical technology is actually this instrument right here. This piece of technology was invented by Edison in 1877. Called the phonograph, it was used to record the first piece of music in history, Mary Had a Little Lamb. While this isn't the original recording, what you're about to hear is a version recorded by Edison himself, demonstrating the recording abilities of the foil phonograph.
The first words I spoke in the original phonograph, a little piece of practical poetry. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
The device takes the vocals and the sound of an object and plays back the recorded sound waves from a cylinder to produce the quality of sound you just heard. 10 years later, Emil Berliner created a device similar but overshadowed Edison's phonograph. Called the gramophone, it worked exactly like the phonograph, however rather than recording onto a cylinder, it recorded the sound waves onto discs. This made it easier to make copies of the recordings as well as make the process easier to record on an easily designed disc rather than a cylinder. In 1904, Lee De Forest patented the triode, the very first amplifier device. The purpose of the device was to amplify the sound waves while also controlling the volume of the sound. This technology would be used to help bring the modern electronic instrument to life. In 1931, the electric guitar was invented out of necessity for guitarists in order to be heard while performing. This led to the creation of the Hammond organ in 1934 and the electric bass in 1935. In the same year, Alan Lumlin came up with the idea to create stereophonic 3D sound. But it wasn't until 1940 when the film Fantasia came out that Lumlin's work was a success and was dubbed Fantasia. In 1958, the cassette tape was born but was a critical failure, and it wasn't until 5 years later when Philips designed their own compact cassette tapes that it grew in popularity. But it wasn't until the 70s and 80s that this technology started to shine. In 1979, the first portable cassette player was born. Known as the Walkman, Sony produced and sold millions of these devices, and without them, the rise of turntables and vinyl wouldn't have existed. In 1979, the CD was invented by Philips and Sony, and it wasn't until 1981 when BBC's Tomorrow's World introduced the product to the world, calling it the revolution of the music industry. In 1993, the MP3 was developed and patented by a German company. and paved the world we live in today. Between 1993 and 2001, MP3 players were created and were used by many, much like Walkmans. But Apple in 2001 revolutionized the Walkman with the now world-renowned iPod line, with the original allowing up to 1,000 songs compared to the 150 most MP3 players could hold, with ease at which to find and play songs and the comfortable design of the iPod. The Walkman had been changed forever. In our present day, we have devices like iPhones, tablets, computers, and even our cell phones that allow us to not only listen to music, but create it at the same time. These devices also let us create music, with programs like GarageBand and FL Studios, which allow anyone to create music even through the use of pre-existing loops. Creating music has become simpler and easier for us. But aren't those loops copywritten work too? Under copyright laws, yes, they are technically. The company that has produced those loops owns a right to those. And as such, it is harder for people to create their own music even if they're not musically inclined. To kind of explain this further, I'm going to show you a clip from the film A Remix Manifesto. The film was designed with the purpose to investigate the remix as a genre and why it has attained and received so much flack from the music industry.
Whether or not you think this music is original isn't the point, because the rules of this game don't depend on who made the songs. They depend on who owns the copyright. And according to the people that do, sampling even a single note is grounds for a lawsuit. That means these kids should not be dancing, and you shouldn't be watching, because using these songs in my movie is against the rules too. And the fact that there are people out there calling my favorite artist a criminal is exactly why I need to make this film. Together we've drafted a manifesto, and it goes like this. Culture always builds on the past, but the past will always try to control the future. Our future is becoming less free. And to build free societies, we need to limit the control of the past.
The music industry is changing too, cracking down on the remix, but also exploiting them. Artists like Skrillex and Madeon sample from not just other songs, but also movies, games, television shows, and more, and they don't get flack because they are a part of these labels. But someone without that kind of leverage produces the same quality of work, possibly even better depending on the person, and they have to worry about their art being threatened by law. The songs you heard in this film are remixes of existing music, whether it be a remix of existing songs on the radio currently, an existing song from a video game, or samplings from pop culture. These songs were remixes. Songs like Nicki Minaj's Anaconda sample from Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back, which could be classified as a remix based on the premise that it was explained by Brett Garrett in R.I.P. Remix A Manifesto, a film that I highly recommend checking out and an inspiration for this short film. He mentions in his film that there is a culture he calls copyleft, who fight for the public domain and use for sampling in music, which is present in our lives without us even realizing it. Places like YouTube house a plethora of remixes, some of which you've even heard in this film, and places like OC Remix housing artists dedicated to remixing video game music samplings from the games and incorporating it into their own work. Remixes exist as a way of expression, and throughout history we have been remixing the technology to suit our need to make music. Now I think it is time we accept remixes as a way of expanding the music industry as well.